pleased to be joined by Fred Fleitz, the chief analyst from Lignet, who is Skyping in from Washington, D.C. Fred, we'll let you answer the question. What do you think is transpiring now with the Iranians, with Secretary of State Kerry at the meeting in Vienna? And what do you think Israel is willing to do or not do in the realm of the possibility of Iranians getting nuclear weapons?
Well, JD, it's great to be here. We're in a bad situation. 2 years ago, the Obama administration made a dramatic change in American policy on the Iranian nuclear program. They indicated to the Iranians that if they gave up most of their enriched uranium stockpile, they would be allowed to still enrich some uranium for reactor fuel purposes. And the Obama administration created this myth that reactor fuel grade uranium is less dangerous than a higher enriched level, enriched to the 20% uranium-235 level. That simply isn't true. It only takes longer to use reactor-grade uranium to make bomb fuel than the 20% enriched uranium. So we're now in a position where we moved the goalposts to the advantage of the Iranians, and they've continued to move with that. We have a deal which is supposed to be struck by July 20th, under which apparently we are considering allowing Iran to keep the capability to make plutonium, a very valuable nuclear fuel. And we're arguing over how many centrifuges the Iranians will be allowed to keep. The U.S. reportedly is thinking of letting Iran keep from 2,000 to 6,000 centrifuges. These are used to make enriched uranium for reactors and can be used to make nuclear weapons fuel also. However, in early June, Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, said Iran wants 190,000 centrifuges. This was their negotiating position. And I'm concerned that we're probably trying to find a middle ground between 190,000 and 2,000 to 6,000. 2,000 to 6,000 is too many. Iran should not have any centrifuges. This is the position of the Israeli government, and I believe that if we have a deal struck that allows them to have any centrifuges, Israel may attack Iran. What I think will happen by the 20th is we're simply going to extend the negotiations. Our European allies are tougher on this issue than we are. The Senate there's bipartisan opposition to where these talks are going. And I think the best Kerry can do is to get another 4 to 6 month extension in the talks.
Fred, as we look at this, to hear from the administration, yesterday Eric Holder on ABC's This Week starts talking about the threats to America. And he says the latest threat from Syria about untraceable bombs being put on airplanes is the greatest threat, or to use his exact quote, more frightening than anything else. I know it's a concern, but is it in fact number one as you evaluate the national security concerns we have right now?
I think it is the number one national security concern. We saw in December 2009 with the underwear bomber, where Abu Muttalib, a Nigerian who tried to fly to the United States through Amsterdam with a bomb that was nearly undetectable. It was sewn into his underwear. That Al-Qaeda is trying new and innovative ways to stage terrorist attacks and get past transportation security. Apparently, we have a new intelligence tip that Al-Qaeda, probably Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula out of Yemen, has a new effort to design some type of undetectable bomb. And most of the reports are that this bomb is going to come through London. And there are countries urging their nationals not to go through Heathrow Airport in London because of concerns that there's a new effort to build this undetectable bomb, send it from London, and detonate it over the United States.
And Fred, as you are offering your comments, we should point out the lead story on our parent website, Newsmax.com, has to do with the notion of those undetectable bombs. As the headline reads, extreme concern over threat of undetectable terrorist bombs. Fred, here's the problem as I see it. We've heard that TSA for international flights into the United States is stepping up security measures. Most people believe that would be reasonable. Yet in the United States this weekend, we were greeted by news that the minors who have come across our borders illegally and are now being flown to different cities within the interior of the United States, that TSA is not requiring any identification for those minors. As an intelligence expert, Is there any way to make sense of that?
I think this is a security loophole that's pretty enormous. There's this issue of minors who could be carrying weapons with them. Well, we also know from reporters that it's extremely easy to cross this border. I saw a reporter over the weekend who crossed the border in Mexico, with Texas-Mexico border. There was no security around. It was so easy for her to do. We know there are terrorist suspects who are looking to find vulnerabilities, and this is Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula as well as ISIS.
And reports from Arizona, the state I represented in Congress, another Islamic prayer rug found on the land of a rancher whose land is on the border. So with all of that, and mindful of the assessment of the commander of Southern Command, Marine Corps General John F. Kelly, who says the border is the major existential threat to the United States today, from an intelligence point of view, how dangerous has our porous southern border become?
I think it's an enormous threat. The border's not defended. If all these unaccompanied minors can cross the border, so can older terrorists. I mean, real terrorists, members of Al-Qaeda, members of Hezbollah. We know there is collaboration between Iran, Venezuela, and Hezbollah. There's been Hezbollah operatives reported in Venezuela. If the border is so porous and if it's being publicized, this could be a magnet for these terrorist operatives to try to make a move to get into this country.
It is curious to see what transpires on the southern border, Fred, because we understand it is not only the obvious concern about Middle Easterners, but we hear that any number of Russian nationals and Chinese, you name it, people are coming across our southern border. With that in mind, what would have to happen would we have to have extensive domestic intelligence to try to get a handle on the millions of illegals who have crossed this border and assess the security threat?
I think we're going to need better intelligence to assess those who've crossed the border. But the first step we have to do is to get a relationship with Mexico where Mexico does its part to stop people from approaching the border. There are many people responsible for the situation. We are inadequately defending the border, and there is obviously some type of arrangement with Mexican security to let these unaccompanied minors and other persons get to the border. I mean, there's checkpoints all over Mexico. These people are not getting to our border without the Mexican police knowing about it.
Fred Fleitz, 10 to 20 years ago, we would take a look at Central America, principally for the trafficking of drugs into Central and South America on into the United States. But now it's human trafficking. One of the leaders of a Central American country basically said to the United States, either you figure out a way to handle our folks, or we're still going to keep sending them. That is a paraphrase, but have we gotten things completely backwards in terms of providing foreign policy monies to Central American republics who apparently are actively involved in sending their minors, people under the age of 18, northward here through Mexico to the United States?
I think that's a good point. These states have been made to pay no cost for sending unaccompanied minors to our borders, and I think this starts to happen. This has to happen. Mexico has to pay a price, not only for holding a U.S. veteran, which is another story we can talk about another time, but allowing these unaccompanied minors to the border, as well as so many Central American countries who are engaging in this. If we make them pay a price, perhaps we can get them to stop this.
Well, you mentioned the Marine languishing in Mexico, and certainly that has to be a major concern. Anything on your radar screen about a minute left, anything coming through about the Marine, any possibility of his release?
I don't see anything being done to get his release. And when President Obama speaks to the President of Mexico and doesn't raise this, I just wonder what's going on at the White House. This should be a major bilateral issue between both countries, and Mexico should be given an ultimatum that they have to free this Marine immediately.
Fred Fleitz, we thank you for your analysis as the chief analyst for Lignet.com and for continuing in-depth analysis and forecasting on the terror threat confronting this nation and our national security. You can check Lignet.com. We encourage you to do so. We also encourage you to send us your comments. You can do so via social media. Tweet us what is on your mind about the story we just discussed at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. There's also newsmaxtv.com/comment.